Shogun episode nine's out. The whole episode was pretty intense. I'm really curious to see how people want this to end. From here on, there'll be spoilers. So the entire premise of the episode is Mariko's job is to get Toranaga's ladies and go back the next day. He knows that Ishido is holding them all hostage and needs to demonstrate it, and Mariko, because she's of high birth, is the best one to do this. So she antagonizes Ishido when they meet. He says that she can't leave without a permit, and that she says she's gonna anyway. She says it'll be seppuku at sunset because she's failed to do her duty. So everyone's like encouraging her not to die. They're trying to figure out how to get out of it. People think she's playing games and not gonna do it. And she's ready to do it. Ishido does give in, gives her the permits, and then that night, a bunch of ninjas attack Toranaga's group, and the episode ends with Mariko getting blown up. This doesn't seem like a show to me that will keep her alive after that. I guess maybe they could, but I'd be pretty surprised. So let's just get into it. We start off with the flashback 14 years ago. They say that Mariko has tried to kill herself 3 times. This is the little intro scene. This is something we've already known, that she's just been wanting death pretty much since she lost her whole family. And we also see her talking to the Portuguese monk, and we can see their relationship has been around for a long time, and he was there at a really low point for her in her life. This episode is called Chapter 9, Crimson Sky. Pretty self-explanatory for this one. Crimson Sky is their plan for Toranaga to take over by force. And this episode is the prelude to that. John is talking to her and trying to figure out why exactly she's there. And she says, essentially, I have my own thing to do. You do your own thing. And he talks about their ship where they got a bunch of silk and Japanese money and made a huge profit off of them. And then kind of laughs about them being their friends. So Mariko comes and sees Toranaga's wife and his concubine that just had his baby. And they're kind of going through all the formalities of being introduced here. The Portuguese monk is insisting that Blackthorn is on his own. And his boss is essentially saying, you're falling for their tricks. Like, he's not buying it. And obviously, he would be right. Yabushige is teaching John how to bow, proper formalities, and he wants him with him when they go see Ishido because he's going to try to offer him as a gift. He had a pretty good part in the opening line, too, when their ship is pulling up. And he's like, I hate this fucking place. If it wasn't for him boiling that guy alive in the first episode, he might be the most relatable character because he's pretty much just trying to survive. We get a little thing here where Kiyama, one of the Christian regents, is like, oh, nice of you to bring my prisoner back to me. And then he actually started speaking to John in Portuguese. And John's kind of making fun of him, being like, you don't give a shit about the faith. It's all about your purse strings. He doesn't really even deny it. He's pretty much just like, yeah, that's how it is. He refers to himself as a student of trade and says they don't need any more pirates around here. And John keeps having to be like, I'm not a pirate, which has been happening since episode 1. Yabushige and John go talk to Ishido. He offers John as a gift. Ishido says no. And he kind of bitches at Yabushige for being a traitor. And when Yabushige denies it or that he killed Josen, he pretty much just has to concede, like, you're going to get my head anyway. Don't worry about it. And then Mariko kind of takes over this scene. They're having a poetry contest, and Mariko gives this really bleak starting line for all the contestants about a branch with no leaves and says that she won't be competing. Everyone's like, what a fucking downer, even though it's a good line. And then right after this, she starts becoming really antagonistic to Ishido because obviously she's here for a purpose. So her and Ishido are kind of going back and forth, and she's being about as disrespectful as she can be without stepping over the line until this part, where she says the matter is closed. I'm leaving tomorrow with Toranaga's women, unless we're all hostages here. And of course, Ishido keeps saying no one's a hostage, blah, 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 because he's trying to legitimize his power grab, so he can't have the perception that everyone is being taken hostage openly, even if they are. And what Mariko is doing here on Toranaga's behalf is exploiting this. So by saying she's only here for the day and she's going back to Edo with Toranaga's women, she's essentially forcing Ishido to let them go. Because if she lets them go, then all the other people who want to leave are going to be like, hey, we want to leave also. And if they don't let her go, then it confirms they're all hostages and they're going to get pissed off and probably try to rise up and leave by force. So she's putting him in a no-win situation here. She does a really good job in this scene. She's being pretty authoritative and just like not having any shit. And it gets pretty heated. And eventually it ends with her saying, okay, well, I'm leaving tomorrow, so it is what it is. Yabushige is super pissed off. He doesn't know Toranaga's plans. He's like, you were antagonizing him intentionally. And Mariko's like, no, I have a duty to do, and I'm going to do it. So she's kind of hiding behind this guise of doing her job. And John is like, please don't try to force your way out tomorrow. You don't need to walk into the end of a sword to prove that it's sharp, because they're going to stop her by force. And she just keeps reiterating, it's my duty, and I'm going to do it. We get this thing with her kid here. He's like, knock it off. I'm going to marry into Kiyama's family. Like, you're an embarrassment. Our family name shames me. And if you keep acting like this, you're not my real mom. This is one of the few times that we see Mariko actually break emotionally, where she's like crying because her son is being a little dick to her. And they did a good job of making all the young people really annoying in this show. Mariko gets Toranaga's women. They get their little caravan of samurai or soldiers, and they're like, time to go. So their caravan's ready. They're trying to force their way out. These guys are like, no. And then her men kill these two, but there's a bunch more. We end up with this little battle in this courtyard where her men are fighting Ishido's men. And obviously all of her men died because they're way outnumbered. But the whole time she's standing in the middle of the courtyard and no one's coming near her to take a shot at her or anything because they need her to live. Because if she dies, that will spark the rise up from the other families. Here's a wide shot for you. You can see everyone is fighting everywhere except for near her because they can't have her get hurt. And then she's like, so it is true, we are being kept here by force. So because she knows they can't hurt her, she has her helper hand her weapon. And she attacks and attacks and attacks and doesn't really land any blows. She hits one guy once, but she can't break through. So eventually she kind of breaks down crying and is like, I can't get through this many men. We're being held here against our will. We must go back. And since I failed my duty, I'm going to commit seppuku at sunset. Obviously, this was all planned ahead of time, and she's just kind of going through the motions here. And the regents are all trying to figure out what to do because they're like, she's a Christian, she won't do it. And she asks Kiyama to be her second when she makes this pledge because he's also a Christian and she doesn't want her soul to go to hell. Oichiba explains what I already explained, that now they're in a no-win situation. If she kills herself, everyone else is going to be pissed off and rise up violently. If they let her go, then everyone else is going to be like, hey, we also want to leave. After this, there's this whole guise of the heir wanting to speak to the Anjin. This request requires Mariko to show up to translate, and obviously this is all just so Oichibo can talk to Mariko. Because Oichibo doesn't want Mariko to die. They've been close since they were kids. Even though she has her issues with her family, it seems like she still cares about her, and she's obviously pretty upset by everything happening. To the point where she's asking her to stop playing games and not go through with this. But they both end up getting pretty emotional, and John kind of stomps off because he's really frustrated with this whole situation, which obviously he has been all season, but now it's affecting him personally because Mariko is one of the only people that he actually cares about. And we get a really nice scene here between John and Mariko, which almost ensures that she's going to die. Total death flag. He's essentially begging her not to go through with this. He's like, Toranaga's exploiting your loyalty. And she's like, this is what I've always wanted. And she tries to say life and death are the same. And he's like, yeah, but only one's permanent. And then eventually he just caves and says, even if you won't do this for yourself or whatever, will you not go through with this for me? And she's pretty clearly upset and holds his hand for a second, but still lets go in the end. So it's a really well done scene where they're not being super overly emotional, but there's a lot of emotion behind it. I really like the way this is done. And obviously a part of the restriction is their culture, which I think probably makes it better than what it would have been if they had had the option to do the kissing and the crying and the yelling and all that. You get a much more subdued but still really impactful scene. Everyone's kind of just waiting on sunset to see what's going to happen. And Yabushige gets a message from one of Ishido's messengers that he's willing to accept Yabushige working for him now. But we don't see him give an answer. Mariko does her final confession with the Portuguese monk. And they're both pretty emotional because obviously they've known each other for 15 years. And she does her last confession, which is pretty much that she's just not a very good person. We get a little thing here where John draws a line in the sand and he's just kind of staring. And I guess this is supposed to be symbolic of something, but I'll be honest, I just don't get it. Like he's in the little garden, but I don't know what exactly he's going for here. Because he just draws like a 1 foot line and then kind of stares at it. I'm sure someone smarter than me can tell me. They start beating the drums and it's officially sunset. So now's the time for Mariko to commit seppuku. Kiyama doesn't show up to be her second, essentially saying that she can send her soul to hell. So John offers to be her second, even though he obviously doesn't want to, because he knows how important it is to her. We get a bunch of dramatic build-up, and then Ishido shows up at the last second, throws the permits at her, and says you can leave in the morning, and talks about what kind of nonsense it is that she would actually think she's a prisoner here. And obviously all of Toranaga's ladies are like, hey, can we go too? And he's like, yeah, just submit your permits, obviously. And obviously he's being a lying piece of shit, so. John helps her up because she's pretty shaky after almost dying. And they kind of hold hands here in front of everyone and look at each other pretty intensely. And this is pretty brazen for their standards, I think. Because they're doing this in front of everybody who was there to see her seppuku. Mariko is trying to go to bed. And now John sneaks into her room the way that she did to him earlier in the season. So now you know she's fucked. Both literally and figuratively. And, as you think everyone would expect, Yabushige betrays him. You can see this guy says, Lord, we have it covered. And they're talking about how the ladies brought all the sake out since Mariko's alive. And then he stabs this guy, and a whole bunch of shinobi come flooding in. And you can see the ninjas just come in, slaughter everyone in their sleep pretty much. And then Yabushige goes back and joins in and starts yelling, intruders, intruders. John finally gets to do shit, and they're able to escape from these like 4 ninjas that found him. This scene is pretty lucky, at least the way that it was done, but it's nice to see John using his guns finally. And Mariko is also able to kill one. And I really like this scene here. They hear him sneaking through the walls, and John has everybody back up and shoots him through the wall and then grabs him and then blows his head off. Yeah, it's pretty much just a madhouse, and they're fleeing for their lives. It's just John, Yabushige, and a couple men, and then Toranaga's women. So obviously they're really screwed as far as fighting capacity. They flee into a storehouse that has heavy doors and barricade themselves in. I'm not really sure why Yabushige hops back in with them. My nose did not blow his cover, but to me this just seems like it's setting up for him to get killed and Ishido to get what he wants by using him and killing him. And John wants to fight for their lives, but Mariko's like, just give up, stands in front of the door because they're going to blow it open, and the explosion obviously hits her right here. And presumably she's dead. This is where the episode ends. Super annoying cliffhanger. Kind of expected from this show, I guess. But yeah, this whole episode was pretty intense. I actually didn't have that much to say about it because plot-wise, I thought this was one of the most straightforward episodes. And although the scenes are really intense and kind of drawn out, there's not really too much to say about them because pretty much everything's on the table at this point. So yeah, we've got a lot to fit into the last episode. And I'm really curious to see who people want to win now. Because at this point, Toranaga has used his son's death, his best friend's death, Mariko's death, all for this long game power grab that he's doing. And Ishido did a much more direct power grab. And people have died because of him. But we don't really have the emotional connection to them that we do to Toranaga's group. So I'm assuming next episode will be just an outright attack on Osaka. But I actually don't know how it's going to end. I don't know if John's going to die, if he's going to escape. I do think Toranaga will win in the end. I don't know how ruthless he'll be or anything if he does win and killing Ishido and the other regions. It would be pretty interesting if he was just brutal and like cleaned them all out and then called himself Shogun. Because then that would really recontextualize pretty much the entire season. Because he's been doing this whole, I don't want any more deaths, I don't want any more power shtick. So yeah, this is a really good second to last episode. And I'm looking forward to the finale. Let me know what you think will happen if you're not a book reader and you haven't seen the 1980s show. If you're a show-only person like me, feel free to guess. I'm kind of thinking that at this point, Toranaga is going to win, become Shogun, and everyone else around him is going to die. Because he's just been so ruthless and so close to the chest the whole time with the way he's playing. But anyway, like and subscribe and all that. Thanks. See ya.